when I think of BYOPills, I really think of it as two verticals. One as BYOPills as consumables that are interoperable with other games, and the second vertical being our own Bioverse, where all the assets that we've released are provided utility within our own game and MMORPG eventually.
You're listening to the Unstoppable Podcast, the go-to place for everyone to learn about the latest innovations in Web3, NFTs, and the decentralized web. Welcome to the Metaverse.
GM, welcome to the Unstoppable Podcast. My name is Josh Gordon. I'm your host, and we've got a special episode today with an entire team, the BYOPills founding team. We've got Dr. Ether J, Pether, George, and Jetheca joining me. So we've got a squad podcast today, and we're going to dive into Web3 gaming and the BYOPills project. Now, this one should be really interesting for me because I'm into Web3 gaming. I'm excited to see the developments around it, but I'm also a BYOPill holder. I think I've been a holder for maybe 8+ months now. So I'm stoked, and I just want to say welcome to everybody. How you all doing?
Hi.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, you. Before we started this, you all said that the last podcast you had done was pre-launch, so you've got a ton of developments going. I mean, there's been so much has changed in the last year in the NFT world. So, you know, this podcast should be a great refresher for your whole NFT community and all the pillagers out there, right?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Josh. Thank you for having us. We're very excited to do this now.
I'm excited too. Well, let's start it all off. You all kind of know who's going to take these questions, but the first one I want to throw out to the team is: can you walk me through how the original concept of BYOPills came about and how you got into crypto in the first place, and how that led you and the team to building out this NFT community and what the game that's coming?
Sure. I think I'll start. I'll take this one. I got into the crypto space back in 2013. I heard about Bitcoin. I heard about how easy it is to, make transactions almost pretty instantly and with low fees. And that's something that really attracted me to the space. And since then, I've been watching it. But that's how I kind of discovered NFTs in late 2020, almost like October, November. And I got introduced to NFTs through digital art, actually. That's how it all started. And immediately it clicked into my brain, like how digital art is just like scratching the surface of NFT technology, and how much more that could be done with that technology. So back then, in the early days before avatars, one of the big hypes was like digital wearables and interoperability. And I really liked that idea, especially because I was a gamer back in the old days. I was a heavy gamer, but digital wearables was a big thing, and a lot of people, spend money on it and all that. So, I think what really clicked is like what other things are important in a game, and it's not just your avatar or your wearables, but also your weapons, your consumables, all these types of things. And so that's really how BYOPills kind of came to be. I spoke to George, Doc, and Jetheca before BYOPills, and kind of they already had their own studio. They were already working on many really cool and awesome stuff. So I thought they were like perfect for the space, and kind of just explained it to them, and they were on board. And that's kind of how it happened. The focus was initially on consumables and interoperability, and bringing that to blockchain gaming.
For sure. And just so, since we do have multiple people on the pod, I just want to make it super clear who's who. So that Pether, that I just want to say you were the one sharing that. You're the founder of BYOPills. So maybe before we go a little bit further, let's just get everyone to just quickly say their name so we can really easily understand who's who while we're talking.
Yeah, for sure. The doc, a lot of people have heard my voice on Spaces already. And so yeah, that'll be me.
Okay, I'm Jetheca. I'm the lead artist on the project, and I think that's the first time doing a podcast.
Amazing. And I think we just lost George, but maybe George will pop back in.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, Pether, thanks for that breakdown. And why, so you mentioned you're a gamer, and you started thinking about the interoperability and composability of NFTs and how they really lead to working well with games. But why did you want to work at the intersection of Web3 and gaming?
Yeah, I mean, I used to play. I was a heavy gamer of RuneScape. I played a lot of RuneScape back in the day, and one of the big things I noticed back then is that there was a lot of demand for people buying the in-game currency on like third party marketplaces, right? And it wasn't really considered quote unquote legal. Like you would get banned if you were caught buying these items or buying even characters that are fully leveled up and all that. And it just, with Web3, it just makes so much sense that all these items are actually tokenized and people could actually have ownership over them and easily trade them if they want to, without really having to go through the hurdles of going through a third party and facing potential bans and all that. So that idea to me was like what really excited me about the space, having all these digital items. You actually have true ownership over them over the blockchain as tokenized items that you could trade very easily on like OpenSea or other marketplaces. So that was something that was very exciting. And another thing is, with Web3, there's always, I think the most important part of Web3 is the community itself. So you have a community that you're building the game around, and you're taking all these feedback and suggestions of the community and implementing them in the game. So it feels, it feels more wholesome. Like everyone's really working together to make something and a full product. So I think really that's why I wanted to get into the space and what attracted me to the space.
Yeah, I wrote a Twitter thread on Web3 gaming and did some research on RuneScape actually. And you can still go on eBay today and buy RuneScape gold for like US dollars. And I then even found an article from the Economist. And back in 2009 in Venezuela, people were using RuneScape gold instead of the local currency because of how volatile the bolivar was. So it's pretty crazy that like that idea of in-game currencies, especially with RuneScape specifically, we started to see the foundations that a lot of people like you are thinking about in gaming by adding your own token on top of it. And so cool to see the developments over the years. And,
that's really interesting. And honestly, it's I think RuneScape is really a very good example of a game that if you just put on the blockchain would be so successful because it had the in-game economy, it had the complexity behind that, it had the fun factor, the demand, the supply. Like if you were just able to tokenize all these in-game assets, that would be, in my opinion, one of the best like Web3 games right now, right? So. It's really awesome to see, and it's crazy that the people are still buying and selling RuneScape gold on eBay, and that just tells you how that there's massive demand for these things. And if you just make it easier for the consumer or the player to go through these processes, the demand is there.
Yeah, and if I could also chime in on that question, the fact that like coming from I'm more of the technical guy here, and coming in from like how game studios build games and how things work. Aside from the fact that things are tokenized, you had these team of game designers, developers, and actual 3D artists sit together in a room. They just brainstorm, come up with ideas. Like now, I feel like this room is Discord. Like everyone is giving out ideas. Sometimes we scrap features, rewrite them in different ways because of how the community said they wanted something or felt this should work. It's just so nice to see, and it just helps you build a much better product for the community because they know what they're expecting, and we know what they want. And we're working incrementally together. So we're just not developing something that we're not sure if the community is going to like, because as we're working on it, we're getting feedback and we're improving and hopefully trying to adhere to most of the community. So yeah, that's really nice to see in terms of the development part of the actual project.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know too much about game development, but I would imagine that with some of these Web3 games and NFT games we're seeing, and BYOPills really being a good example of this, is how many games have been built with that community feedback from the beginning versus the traditional way was probably always a team builds a game over a series of years and then just releases it. And that's once it's released is the first time you get that feedback. But you all have been getting feedback along the way ever since your first NFT drop.
Yeah, and this is what we love about it. And I mean, in terms of development perspective, this is one thing that we had to speak of and let the NFT space know about, because in reality game development takes time, and I think you know that, a lot of people know that, and it's complex. Features have to be written properly. You want to avoid bugs, you want to deliver a proper deliverable for people to enjoy, especially when there's tokens and earning mechanics and all that, and everything's intertwined. So when you have different features coming in and different community feedback coming in, you will have to take your time and just adhere your features, start changing things here and there to adapt your game and make it work the right way. And this is why we don't usually release lots of footage from the actual Bioverse, because we're trying to bring in the most important feedback we got from the community, put it in before we release any in-game footage. And for us, that's the priority. I mean, we could have just released a simple Bioverse based on what we thought was perfect without the community's feedback, but that would have been, what the community wanted. So, and that's why we usually take more of our time in terms of the game development aspect of things, and we think it'll pay off big time, hopefully in the future.
Yeah, and one thing I want to ask is, you kind of mentioned the timeline of building.
Yeah.
Now, does working with the community extend the timeline of game development, or like how are you thinking about when the first version of the game is going to be out? Are we talking months? Are we talking years?
I mean, see, like we're talking. Hopefully, we're talking months for our first version of the game, and that's when we talk about different versions that are coming. It's not gonna be only one version, but we want the community to see something, to feel something, and just get into that game, and then we can start adding and keep on like updating the game. But we just don't want them to wait multiple years until they see a first version, because that wouldn't be fair. But that's the thing that we wanted to discuss, and the complex thing about game development. Sometimes in studios, in traditional studios, when you have a feature list, that feature list is set in stone. The reason why it's set in stone is because any change in that feature list might affect the whole list, might affect any other feature dependent on that feature, and then the team will have to rework a lot of things. Deadlines are going to change, timing is going to change, and this is why we're shifting towards this no deadline way of doing things, because we think that if we want to take community feedback, add it into the pipeline every other week or so, and then switch things up depending on these changes that we're getting from the community, I think it might extend the timeline a bit, but that's only for the benefit of the community and for the actual game. I mean, we could just disregard all this feedback, develop on the old timeline, and just deliver something which is not what the community wanted. Yeah. So we would prioritize having everything ready for the community rather than just like crunching our timeline. Makes and of sense. Course, we prioritize quality. So we want such a good quality game to be out there.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And Pether, I want to come back to you with a question. You mentioned interoperability. Now, why is gaming so poised for disruption by NFTs? Is it that interoperability aspect? And if so, like, what makes you so excited about this idea of interoperable game assets? I feel like BYOPills really came out from the jump and said, our NFTs are going to be consumable in the Metaverse by like all games or many games, not just the one we're building. And so I feel like you guys have put a big emphasis on that. And I want to kind of hear from you, why is that aspect of crypto and Web3 so powerful for gaming? Yeah,
sure. I mean, to start, I think like having a digital item, like a pill that acts as a consumable in one game, like we're just limiting it. If it's not in Web3, it's on a centralized game server, that item is just for that game. And the utility that's provided to that item is going to be limited to what that game provides. But with Web3, we open that up to so many different, we just increase the potential of that one item. It doesn't have to be just a consumable in your game, but it could also act as different types of consumables in other games, and maybe not just consumables. Maybe like we've seen with some talks with our potential partners. For example, a BYOPill could act as bait for a Venari in the game of Legends of Venari, for example. So it could take many different shapes and forms, and just adding on to that value of that token. At the same time, it could act as a way to provide access to other parts of the game, and not just a consumable itself. But for example, pill holders have been getting drops the past year since we've launched, right? So that is just like in my opinion, an added value to owning a game item that's supposed to be just a consumable, but you're actually now getting, eventually you're going to be getting a trip token with that. You're going to be getting some drops. You're going to be getting access to other games that could also provide drops to that asset. And then you add another layer to that of access to like merch and all these types of things. So really the potential is unlimited when it comes to a game item or a digital item in general. And that's really what makes it exciting. It just opens up the opportunities for so many ways to integrate an NFT, not just in your world, but also other worlds, and promoting not just your world, but also promoting other worlds as well. So, and it fits the Web3 ethos of like a community building together, trying to create this ultimate open metaverse that is interconnected,
Yeah. And have we ever seen an in-game asset that has utility in other games before? Like, I mean, it just seems like it was never possible in any prior Web 2 game. I mean, anyone that's on a console, any computer game. I mean, there's never been an in-game item that's usable by basically any other game before, right?
Exactly.
No, we haven't. And, this is where it also allows us, it's just like these, in the traditional world, again, there's these SDKs, these software development kits that usually people would take and use to build upon existing games. And I see the pills and any like consumables in the metaverse and Web3 ownership. It's basically opening this SDK for any other game that would like to integrate pills. Like even if we collaborate with a number of projects, you could have any other project that really didn't have any communication with us. They could link to the blockchain and tell their communities, you know what, if you guys own pills, you're going to get power-ups in our game. And they could just develop on the pills in their game. They don't even need our permission. And this is what's so nice about Web3. And this adds to the interoperability factor. It's just everywhere. It can happen easily, and it's just amazing, really.
That's awesome. And yeah, we'll get into we'll get into more of how many like partners you imagine using this in a minute here. But I think it's really exciting, and it just opens up the opportunity for how far these NFTs can reach, right? Like the more partnerships that are enabled, the more different communities you get involved, and all of a sudden these NFTs can take a life on their own outside of the Bioverse.
Exactly, and just from a gamer's perspective, like imagine you spend your time, effort, and skill into one game, and you unlock or earn a certain item that could not just be used in that game, but also knowing that you could go and use that same item in other games. I think it adds more exciting factors to gaming. For example, we're still in early talks, and this is by no means an alpha leak, but for example, with Legends of Venari, one of our partners, their game is all about capturing Venaris using bait. But imagine you're able to capture a Venari in their game and then bring that captured creature back into the Bioverse that you could use as a sort of pet or a beast in some way, right? A companion. So all of a sudden, just capturing that creature becomes so much more exciting because it has utility in other games, and that's really what makes Web3 gaming just so exciting from a gamer's perspective.
Yeah, and so we've just talked a lot about interoperability, but are there other aspects of gaming that people are just not talking about enough when it comes to Web3 and NFTs?
Honestly, so to that question, I would say interoperability itself. I know there's probably other things, but I know a year ago that was really a focus in Web3. Interoperability, digital wearables, we've introduced consumables. That was a big thing. And now what we're starting to see is more of a shift to each project trying to build like these metaverse silos. And I feel like the conversation around interoperability has decreased since then. Like it's not getting as much attention as it deserves, because I get the reason why everyone wants to build their own metaverse and their own like metaverse silo to increase their to grow their ecosystem and provide more value. But if we could bring back the focus and shift to interoperability and how we could interact with these NFTs across these different worlds, all of a sudden we're really providing value across the whole ecosystem. So to me, I think we've kind of lost touch of this recently, but hopefully, where we could bring that conversation back and focus on that, because I think it's one of a very important utility that comes with tokenized assets.
Yeah. I wonder if that's partially because people are just starting to focus on building the game itself, and especially during like a market downturn, before you start figuring out what other, like the five other projects that you need to integrate with, which may not be around in a year's time. You have to focus on building yours first, but you all have had such a head start on the building and such positive community support that maybe you're able to branch out and think about partnerships more so than other game developers. But totally hear you. Yeah, let's bring the conversation back to interoperability.
And no doubt that's we're also going through the same thing. We're developing our game, so eventually, no doubt, we're going to be looking to not just have pills as consumables in other games, but we also want to integrate other projects and their NFTs into our world, and we could only do that once we have a fully developed game. So I completely get that. As long as the conversation's still there, people are still open to the idea of interoperability and not just looking at creating a closed game loop. I think that's really just the important part here.
Makes sense. Well, let's dive into everything BYOPills, and then we'll get to some community questions later on in the pod. But to start off with, can you just hit everyone with like when you started with the pills, the consumables of the metaverse, did you have the vision for all the other assets that came on later, the land, the crafts, the vapes, apostles, keys, and I'm sure there's going to be more, but did you have that vision fully fleshed out from the beginning, or was the idea really just focused on pills when the project launched?
Yeah, I think I'll take this question, but initially our focus was on pills as consumables in other games, but at the same time, when we created the pills, we had an idea. We basically knew that at one point we're probably going to have to pivot into creating our own game, given our team is already a team of game devs with experience. So we wanted to keep that flexibility there, and so that's why, if you notice in the BYOPills, the pill tops are actually like terrains of games, and we were able to kind of introduce that in Bioland. But initially it was mostly about consumables. Then we realized, after talking to several partners, that we were actually very early in the space. So a lot of games were still in the idea phase. They haven't been developing. I think now we're starting to see games starting to be developed, but of course that takes time. So when we noticed that we were still early in the space, we needed to make a quick pivot here and make a change to stay relevant in the space, especially in a very fast-paced space that continually changes probably every week. So that's when we really decided, all right, we have the assets to make this possible, the human resources. Let's go and create our own utility for our own pills as consumables, and that's where Bioverse came up. And when we started Bioverse and the idea, that all of a sudden opened up a whole list of possibilities that we could introduce to our ecosystem. And that's where, Apostles came in, Biocrafts, the land itself. So when I think of BYOPills, I really think of it as two verticals. One as BYOPills as consumables that are interoperable with other games, and the second vertical being our own Bioverse, where all the assets that we've released are provided utility within our own game and MMORPG eventually.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And what other games can they be used in? I mean, right now, I guess that's how many can they be used in right now? And if you had a North Star goal for how many games they'd be interoperable with, what are you shooting for?
Sure. Right now, I think one of the games you could use them in is Galaxy Fight Club. So you could go into their game, have a BYOPill in your wallet, and you have a consumable that you could use once per round. We're also very close to launching our announced partnership with the Legends of Venari. That's where pills will act as baits to capture exclusive Venaris or creatures in their game. So those are two use cases right now. We also partnered with Shibi Clash. I know they've made some changes, and I've talked to them recently, and it's one of their main focuses is also bringing utility to BYOPills in their game. But yeah, like I said, it's still early. A lot of games are still in development, so it's hard to see that benefit come to fruition right now. But I'd say in a year's time, you're going to see a lot more announcements when it comes to game partnerships and direct utility.
Yeah.
As for what games we'd like to see them in, Norse, I mean, honestly, all the games in the metaverse, any blockchain game, and not just game, but also a social metaverse like Decentraland or Somnium Space, because pills, they also act as visual alterations, right? They could enhance your experience in the metaverse. For example, you're watching a concert, you could all of a sudden enhance that experience by maybe consuming a pill. But in a game world, you could take that, you could get that experience by getting a power up or something. So, in my opinion, any game that is out there that is open to interoperability, we'd love to partner with them. And so, obviously that includes games like Illuvium, the other side eventually, all big time, and we're actually in talks with them as well. The Red Village, we're in talks with them as well. So as many as possible would be my short answer.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to
And
talk
like
about
I
other
said,
sides
it's an
shortly.
open ecosystem. So when the pills have their solid foundation in this world, we have our world. I mean, a lot of people relate to pills. The actual notion of pills. The fact and that they have a solid foundation in the Web3 space, you're gonna have a lot of teams and games integrate them without even communicating with us, and that might like raise the bar for interoperability in general and the actual integration of the pills ecosystem in other worlds.
Totally. Well, let's talk. Let's move on from pills. Let's talk about Metaverse Land. So you have BioLand, but before we jump into that, like, can you give me a high level? Why is Metaverse Land valuable?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And honestly, my answer to that is how valuable is the platform the land is in initially? Because anyone could release, anyone could sell land, but what really is a digital virtual land? It depends on what the platform is. In Decentraland, land over there allows you to create experiences and build and create experiences in their world. In Sandbox, land means that you could build games in their world, but what is the value of that land? It ultimately goes back to how many users are really playing Decentraland, how many users are playing Sandbox. Is it scalable? Is it being adopted? And that's really where the value of land is. And its specific utilities, it depends on the platform. I mentioned two examples. We took a kind of a different approach there, but it all goes back to how successful the platform is itself.
Yeah. So, do you see these metaverse lands competing with one another? Like a piece of feedback I feel like I've heard is people talk about NFTs as scarce, and metaverse land is scarce. But you kind of just mentioned it, when anyone can make metaverse land. Actually making a digital land isn't scarce. What's scarce is the amount of plots of land within certain networks, certain platforms. So there's only going to be so many bio lands. There's only going to be so many sandbox lands, and I guess it's just down to the demand there. But
Exactly.
If they compete with one another, it's really not the land competing, but it's just where are people spending their time.
I think so, yes. And I don't think like land is, like Decentraland, land and Decentraland and land and Sandbox, they're very different things. They're not really competing with each other, but which platform's getting more users onto which platform's onboarding more users. I think that's where the competition is, where the eyeballs are going to, where time's being spent is going to. I think that's really where the competition is.
Makes sense. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to work through my list here. Let's talk about guilds then. So guilds is something that I haven't seen too many games talk about. I mean, there's definitely elements of it. There's like scholar programs, but what are guilds and why does this make gaming fun?
Yeah, and I'm shocked that this isn't done in many other games as well, because in Web3 it's already like a guild, right? Like Web3 Discord community is already in a way a guild. A guild is just a group of people, a group of like-minded people that share the same vision and goal in whatever that guild is in, right? So in a way, Web3 is just one big guild that is divided into many different guilds, such as the Discord communities and different projects. And we already saw this early on in our Discord. When we released Land, we saw people with like frigid plains create their own group. We saw people with like no man's land biome lands create their own group. So we already saw that these people with similar interests that share the same mindset and goals are starting to separate into different groups. And we wanted to really capitalize on that and create this whole guild system that allows these people to not just communicate with each other, but also play the game together and achieve the goals that they all want to achieve together. And that makes the game, I think, much more fun, especially a Web3 game that is already very community based.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be super interesting to see how people form communities around these games. I guess I feel like in Web2 gaming, there's a little bit less communities. I mean, people form communities around maybe streamers, but in terms of being able to play together, I'd say it's a little bit less so. You might have a group of friends that you always play with and form groups in, but guilds, I'd say guilds are something we're going to see much more in Web3. And maybe this is a question for Dr. Ether over here, but let's talk about some in-game mechanics. So recently you came out and said that you'll be building on Unreal 5. And I'd like to dive into a little bit more, like, why is building on Unreal 5 so valuable and important for game developers? Like, why is that an exciting announcement?
My favorite question. No, so yeah, the fact that we've migrated to Unreal 5 comes because of lots of factors. It's not really one or two factors. We started using Unity, and we were gonna build the actual verse with Unity, and everybody knows that. The whole community was aware of that. And then we took that turn to move to Unreal, and this came. The discussions has started happening as soon as Unreal released their first stable version of Unreal 5. So they've been discussing Unreal 5 for a while now. They've released a beta, an alpha, the early version, the early access versions. We went in, we tested it out. We tried moving BioVerse elements from Unity to Unreal. We felt like things are moving in the right direction for Unreal. And we really were dazzled by their technology. Like, you have Nanite, you have Lumen. Nanite is the fact that you'll be able to render as triangles based on the distance, and it just adjusts triangles based on distance. And this gives us ability, to add lots of processing and achieve the realism we've always dreamt of. And this is our main goal here. The BioVerse isn't just a nice and playable game. It's a really nice looking game, and this is what we're really trying to aim for. We want it to be as realistic as possible. We want the environment, the landscape to feel very feel like home, basically, for people when they're enjoying the BioVerse and when they're actually playing it. And Unreal seems to be moving into that direction, and we think the fact that Unreal released all these features now in 2022, and we have a way to go with NFTs and all that and building games, we think that this is going to keep on getting better. They're already working on M1 native support now for Macs, so this is going to be really good. We might have people playing on MacBooks on the Ultra setting, so that's going to be crazy if they do. And you won't be needing a crazy PC to achieve all that realism and all that. And of course, focusing on the little details of the visual aspects, and that's when Jetheca can come in. I think she can discuss that. She enjoys that the most in terms of the visual aspects. So yeah, you go ahead, Jetheca.
Well, I think you did a good job explaining why we're using Unreal. Basically, also, I would like to add the fact that the way the lighting works in Unreal and the way it generates these hyper-realistic scenes, the tech that it uses just makes it faster to get these results than any other program, which is crucial also to building the BioVerse. And also the fact that you can take film assets now and have them be usable in games, which gives us this push in the visual style, which is perfect for the BioVerse.
Interesting. Yeah, it's cool to hear that you'll be able to play these games and participate in these metaverses on maybe more standard laptops, but still get that extremely high resolution and in game mechanics.
This is what's nice. And we've already mentioned that on Discord. Our aim is to support as many devices as possible, and that's why when you first launch the BioVerse, even in the settings, just like a traditional good quality game, you can set your graphic settings to either low or ultra. But for us, it's preferable to be on ultra to enjoy the whole experience. And if we can achieve ultra on the most devices, then really that's the ultimate goal. And I think Unreal, based on my technical know-how, my humble technical know-how, and what I see is moving towards the future and how they're implementing things, I think they're in the right direction, hopefully, for that. And we'll be able to achieve our vision much faster than we think.
Heck yeah. Well, okay, now let's move on from game mechanics and talk about tokenomics. So something that I know is super highly anticipated in all BYOPill holders is around the TRIP token. And, I know that this is something you guys pushed off from 2021 into 2022 as you were really wanting to make sure that this token drop is done correct. But can you tell me what makes creating an in-game currency challenging? Like, what goes into that? Because, some people might just think, oh, you can just copy paste some kind of a token and just call it something different. But there's got to be more than that goes into it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna take this one. I think like one of the most challenging things for tokens is creating a token that's really sustainable. Having a good balance between demand and supply. And I think so far we've seen a lot of difficulties in the space when it comes to token launch. Supply is really we've seen many examples, some that work, some that don't. And you could control supply as a project owner through vesting schedules, unlock schedules, and all these sort of things. But what's more important is while everyone's trying to figure out the supply side, it's really important to figure out the demand side of things, and that balance is what's going to create a sustainable token. So the demand side all goes back to, and I know this has been talked about before, is how fun is the game itself. I mean, you want people to really want to go and buy these tokens to spend to use in the game to upgrade their player experience or to enhance it or buy items. So like you said, in RuneScape, people are buying RuneScape Gold on eBay, right? So they're doing that because they really enjoy the game and they want to be able to to instead of maybe grind for hours to try to get a certain drop of item, they want to be able to just go and buy it on the market. So the most challenging part is creating that demand and an organic demand, not just one where it's like, all right, I'm buying the token just because the price is going up, because that's not sustainable. You're going to almost always see it crash down eventually. And we've seen that across many projects. It's how do you make that token circulate back within the economy? And that's the main focus here, is to create a fun game and a way where that token could be spent on many different factors and not just one.
Yeah. What did you learn from the Ape Coin drop?
That's an interesting question. I think they had a lot of positives and negatives from that drop. One thing I really learned from them is the way they structured the DAO, both from a legal perspective, but also the way it's utilized. I really like that aspect of their drop and how you get that utility with the governance. But one thing I think I learned is it's tough to airdrop a good amount of token to the community when there is no demand yet for that token, right? So I think right now, the price of the token has been going down, and obviously that upsets a lot of investors. But really, and that's why we're taking the staking approach, at least initially, the 6 month staking program for TRIP, because we know we're still developing the game. We know that we're still building the demand factors for the game. So we don't want to airdrop a 15% of the token initially, where you're going to have a bunch of holders holding the token that without real utility. So in my opinion, the only way it's going to go is down, right? There's no use cases for that. But by prolonging that supply factor over 6 months or more, and allowing us to develop different aspects and sync and faucets and sinks for the token, then all of a sudden you have a much more sustainable token and also a happy community. So that's why I think taking our time into not just the legal side of things and making sure we're compliant with the ever-changing regulations in the space, but also developing demand factors that are sustainable for the token is really important for us.
Yeah, I do see a lot of projects rushing to drop a token. When token is the biggest question in a lot of discords, right? But it's what people want, maybe because it can be associated with free money, but at the same time, if you drop it before there's utility and real use cases for it, then that price is going to trend down, and that could end up leading to a community that leaves because they become unhappy versus waiting, being patient, and dropping it when there's actual use cases for it. So I like how you're approaching that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we discussed this internally a lot. I wanted to chime in on that. And Pether always mentions that, like, on Discord, when we see the when token question, this is the question that we opt out of at the moment because we really know what we're trying to do in terms of the token. And I mean, we're having constant legal meetings with really the ever-changing regulations, especially after what happened to Luna. The thing that happened to Luna is going to add more regulations now, so they ask us more questions. So really, it's just a domino effect on the space. But we really care more about the community and having a sustainable long-term token. We really don't care about pumping than dumping, or we understand it's free money and people will enjoy it, but we'd rather have them enjoy something long term. And we just don't want to see a community that's gonna 80% of it is gonna leave because of just a crash in price, and then all the work we've been doing and all the project we've been building is just gonna go in the dump just because we released the token. We rushed the token and it just crashed or something bad happens. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. We really want to try and build something very sustainable.
Yeah. No, love it. Well, appreciate all those answers. How do we feel about diving into some community questions? We got a ton.
I saw. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we can't get through all of them, but I've got a couple highlighted that I think would be fun to address. The first one's kind of a general one, but what's the biggest obstacle the team has faced to date? We only see the deliverables and have no idea how hard it's been to create some of them. So, are there any big obstacles you can share that you've been able to overcome?
I mean, on a technical perspective, deleting lots of code and rewriting it is just the community doesn't see that. And let's say we're opting to deliver on a Monday, it's Saturday, and we release that we find out that there's something that might make the drop not so smooth or make the experience not so smooth. We are really that team that would just scrap the whole thing and rewrite it from Saturday till Monday, if it comes down to that. And yeah, it happens frequently sometimes. And even now, like the game, we're moving some modules from Unity to Unreal. We don't care. We never mention it to the community because it's our passion. It's what we're building. It's the long-term vision. But these are things that take work. If you would say to a traditional gamer, a game developer, why don't you move from Unity to Unreal? I don't think he would ever do that. So we see the benefits in moving, and we don't care about the actual work that's gonna go into it. So and we don't want it to extend our timeline heavily. So we'll put in the extra time to actually move these assets.
Yeah, no, super interesting. Well, sweet. Then another community question is, how do you envision a marketplace for all these assets and resources working? OpenSea can't be the only solution, right? And so how do you think about the marketplace for all these in-game assets?
Yeah, I think this also touches on another question I saw from the community, which is, are we planning to migrate to an L2? And I think, a lot of the in-game transactions that are going to take place are not going to be on mainnet because, it could be slow, it's costly. So this is not what we want especially for our in-game transactions that could happen, every minute. So, maybe migrating to an L2 is probably going to be one of our best ideas, and we're looking into it. And Dr. Ether J could talk more about that. But also creating a marketplace through the L2 that we end up using is going to be obviously crucial because, and it will help with onboarding traditional gamers as well, because we don't want people to feel like they're playing a blockchain game. We want them to feel like they're playing a fun game that is gasless, that is instant, and that is just backed by a blockchain. And an L2 would make most sense. And with that comes a marketplace built on top of that.
Yeah, and the fact that we have, so I'll add on to that, the fact that we've been asked like L2 and either L1 or L2. I mean, when we're developing the game, it really doesn't change much because what we're doing is we're interacting with the test. So obviously you know about testnet. We're interacting with testnet smart contracts. We can deploy them on Polygon, we can deploy them on mainnet, the Robston network, Rinkeby, whatever it is, and we can really test the game. So it doesn't really have to be a decision that's made now. Until the time where the game is actually ready, we can really switch it a month ahead of release. If we feel like there's a very good network that will fit our vision, we could just point it to that network, to that smart contract, link everything, and everything is good to go. And this is the nice thing about the ETH ecosystem and these L2s. I mean, they all work the same way. It's the same smart contract. It's just literally deployed to another network. And it's just a different way of communicating with that smart contract using different providers. But other than that, nothing changes. So the logic in between stays the same. It doesn't really affect the development. We can really continue just like we're doing at the moment. And if we see fit, we're obviously gonna go for the best best network that we see working with the game.
Yeah.
My favorite, I think you know my favorite. My favorite is the Ethereum mainnet. It stays the Ethereum mainnet, and obviously, if we can make it as gasless as possible and keep it on the Ethereum mainnet, I will try to push for that. Because really, I mean, we all agree that the main network is called the main network for a reason. And if you can keep things on the main layer 1 network, that would be great. But of course, if things are gonna not work on the main network, then we're going to have to resort to the best alternative solution.
For sure. And good explanation there. And I know the community is going to appreciate all that insight from you. Yeah, another one that we got from them was, how are you going to attract gamers to play after many of the people who have been holding for almost a year have a large financial vested interest? It seems most of the growth has been from within the ecosystem. And I think this is a question that goes to really all games. You know, there's going to be some NFT holders within the community, but that's not enough to really, that's not thinking big enough. You're going to need lots of players who don't hold any of these NFTs, right? So how do you attract them to the game?
Yeah, that's a great question, and ultimately, for everyone's success, the game needs to attract players, and specifically traditional gamers as well. Because in the NFT space right now, it's I would say it's mostly investors, right, and not really gamers. But if we're building a game, we want to attract gamers, and what do gamers look for? You know, they're expecting a fair player experience, so they want their time, effort, and skill to be rewarded. And to do that, we need to make sure that we don't create game-breaking mechanics. So, for example, our Bioland and our BYOPills as investments for people right now, people are investing into these assets. They're going to be utilized in a way that doesn't really break the game design of the Bioverse. So, Bioland just acts as, in a way, to its simplest form, it acts as a way to supply all the resources needed in the game. So instead of a traditional game where maybe you get resources from NPCs or you get them from centralized, servers that are owned by the entity, you're actually getting them from land that is owned by the community itself. So that's one way where the asset holders are actually benefiting, but not breaking the game balance. Meanwhile, traditional gamers are just like any other game, they're collecting resources from a land, benefiting the game owners, but the landowners, while also being able to use these resources to play their game in a fair way. Another thing that we mentioned, we didn't really talk about much, is the value of BYOPills, and not just as interoperable consumables, but also in the Bioverse. How is it going to be an asset that doesn't break the balance of the game and doesn't, push away traditional gamers? Because no one wants to hold an asset that's OP, because at the end of the day, we don't want to pay to win game, right? So we talked about Bioland and how the value to that is and how it affects the game. But at the same time, BioPills, we've mentioned that they're blueprints for consumables. And we really never really dug deep into that. But in a way, all the resources that are gathered in the Bioverse, you're going to need these resources, whether to use them directly and consume them for the different hazards in the Bioverse, or you're going to use them to craft items or consumables that will help you with the game. But to craft these consumables, you're going to actually, similar to a traditional game where you pay a fee to craft items, and in our game, you're going to pay a fee to BioPill holders that hold the traits needed for you to create that consumable. So again, we're benefiting here investors, people who are more focused on the financial aspect of it. We're benefiting them because they're getting these fees. At the same time, traditional gamers aren't being impacted by an unfair and unbalanced game design, because similar to how they would pay an NPC to craft an item, over here they're paying a BioPill holder. And same way how they'd collect resources in a traditional game, they're collecting it from a Bioland holder. So doing that really also helps the sustainability of the economy and the NFT holders as well, because they're actually going to be reaping the benefits of the game over a long period of time, and not just through a simple drop that inflates the prices and pumps them up temporarily before crashing back down. We're trying to create a sustainable way that accrues value to holders while keeping a fair and balanced game to attract traditional gamers.
No, love that response and thinking and the way you're thinking about it. Can I throw this is a question I didn't have planned, but can I throw a community question for myself out to you? Can I ask the team to rate my BYOPill?
Sure. What's your BYOPill?
Let me bring it up. You should be able to see my screen here. I've
Oh,
got
that's
I've held it for 10 months now. I bought it for 0.11 ETH 10 months ago. I've got Pink Thunder Aura, the Ionic Orange Ingredient. That's my rare trait.
that's I love that ingredient. That's one of my favorites. And the aura is incredible. I love that pill. Honestly, it looks insane.
Yeah, and Jetheca, you did a lot of the art and design, right? Something I really like
Yeah.
is the blue and purple gradient. It's just such a metaverse like color.
Yeah, that's a really good pill.
Sweet.
From my perspective, I mean, I'm the developer, so no one really takes my design input here. But I love it. I mean, it's I love this type of ingredient, and I love auras in general. So I can't wait to see them actually render in Unreal in a way inside the game, and for the community to enjoy them. So yeah, they're gonna look really nice with the lighting system.
Heck yeah. Well, hey, I'm glad I got some approval from the team. Thanks for making it makes me feel a little bit better for hodling for 10 months. It's been a fun one. I mean, getting the airdrops, I've just really decided with this project to hold. I want to see the outcome of the game. And so if you could give us the 60-second elevator pitch on how to think through that land selection.
I mean, as it loads, I'm gonna try to break it down to its simplest form. It's basically how active do you expect to be in the game? I mean, do you expect to be playing consistently, or do you expect to be more of a passive investor that just holds land and wants to reap its benefits without actually playing the game? And if you're looking to not be as active, I would say being closer to towns and outposts, like we highlighted in the bio docs, would be a better option. I mean, if you want to be able to create a guild, you're going to have 4 adjacent lands, right? So that means you're going to have to most likely have 4 lands that are in the same biome. And to create a guild, you're going to have to place them close to each other during the land selection process, because the requirement for a guild is, at least right now, is to have a minimum of 4 adjacent lands and up to 20 adjacent lands. So and the size of when you create your guild, you're actually eventually, when we release that in the future, you're gonna be depositing those lands that you select into a contract, and in return, you're gonna be able to mint a guild NFT that represents those lands and the guild itself, and unlocks a whole new form of content in the game when it's launched.
No, it makes sense, and I'll definitely give some of the bio docs a deeper read and make sure I'm selecting my area appropriately. But I think I'll probably be choosing to locate it somewhere near an outpost. I think I'll be. I don't know if I'll be the heaviest gamer, but I definitely won't be completely passive. But yeah, I like the advice you shared. So
Yeah.
to wrap this up, it's questions I ask all our guests. I'll ask, this is a super rapid fire question, so we can get input from you all if you want. But the first question is, who's an influential Web3 creator, entrepreneur, or collector that's inspired or educated you? And if anyone wants to share one, that'd be great.
Myself, it would be not really coming from the Web3 space. Would be Elon Musk. It's really, for me, I mean, his work ethic, the way he thinks, the way he envisions stuff, the thinking outside of the box. Really, that's the best part of it. I mean, I love it, and it's just really, he's an inspiration, and he's one of these people that I've always looked up to, and hope we can make BYOPills as big as what he's done.
I like it.
And to me, I think I would say it's Maddie, the creator of Metaverse. Especially early on when I first got onboarded into the NFT space, I learned a lot from him. He had a lot of great value to share, and also learned from his own drop, the Metaverse itself, and how he views interoperability. So that's my favorite.
I think for me, I'll mention a Web3 creator, Fuck Render, and what he's doing with his world right now. I think it's incredible, and I would love to collaborate. Maybe have some of our ingredients in there. But but definitely look up to what he's doing, and I think it's just always pushing these limits in Web3.
Amazing. The second question is, what's your favorite NFT? If you just got to pick one.
Wow. I
BYOPills?
think that's gonna, yeah, that's gonna be obvious. I think it's gonna be BYOPills, and for me, it's BYOPill 8502. I think the community knows the story behind that pill, and yeah, definitely a BYOPill.
I mean, and also obviously we have the respect to all the projects out there, and one project I respect a lot. I mean, I really don't look at even our project or other projects. I don't look at prices. I look at building and I look at how things are going. I appreciate what the cats have been doing. Their developer, Extreme Tom, the way he works, the ethic he has. I love his work, and he's a great developer for the Web3 space. And I think people like this can really raise the bar and keep on growing this field. And yeah, I mean, I have total respect for these guys. And obviously, there's a lot of them, but I mean, I follow his work and I see what he's doing. So yeah.
Awesome. And then the last question is, in 5 years, what's the craziest thing we'll be doing in the metaverse that people just aren't thinking about yet?
I mean, for me, I would say that like the fact that we're seeing these technological advancements today is really crazy in itself. And if we're seeing this today, I already mentioned that I really think that in 5 years we're gonna see some crazy, I mean, support for lots of platforms. You're already seeing, you know, these AR and VR headsets coming along now and being developed upon and becoming better and better. You can now do VR with much less powerful systems, and AR is across your phones. I think it's gonna be getting better and better, and maybe in 5 years we're gonna actually be living in the metaverse with just barely any extra gear, and that's gonna be really fun. I really think with the way things are moving, it's going quicker than expected, and we've got lots of talented devs and designers and everyone working around the world. So yeah, I really think 5 years is gonna be a lot of time for us to build.
Yeah, that's a good take. Well, sweet. I appreciate everybody's insight today and commentary on Web3 gaming. I'm excited to see what you all keep building, and I appreciate you sharing both information about BYOPills, but also just Web3 gaming in general. So to wrap it up, Pether, could you let everybody know how to get in touch with you and the team and keep following BYOPills so they can see what's next?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with us is through our Twitter DMs at BYOPills. And if you want to follow up on what we're doing, please join our Discord. We're always in the general chat, throwing some little leaks here and there. You could go onto our website, BYOPills.com. We have an overview of all the assets that we've currently launched. And also for a lot of in-depth information on the game design and, the game mechanics and all that, and lore and all that type of stuff, then the community has created biodocs.com. Biodocs.com. It's a great platform, and we're gonna continue to build through that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to the team. This has been a great conversation, and if you're interested in learning more about Web3 gaming, comment on my DMs on Twitter at JustWavyJ. Let me know what other projects you want to hear from. The BYOPills team has been amazing. With that, we'll see you next week on another episode of the Unstoppable Podcast, and I'll catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.
Peace.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unstoppable Podcast. If something we said today resonated with you, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this with your friends. And remember, this conversation doesn't have to end here. Tweet us your thoughts, ideas, or questions at Unstoppable Web. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.